Hey friends, welcome to the channel. Today in this video we're going to solve the first problem of week 4 of CS50, which is volume. So to read about the problem and to understand the requirements, the very first thing we do is we come to this website, which is cs50.harvard.edu/x/2025. If you're watching this video next year, type 26, go to week 4 on the left, go towards the bottom, problem set 4, and then this is the problem we are solving today, volume. So we click on volume, and then if you want you can read the entire thing, but basically what we are going to do is we are going to change the volume of a WAV file, which is the audio format, right? So the very first thing we'll do is we'll open Visual Studio Code. I'll command click here to open a new tab, and then click on login to load everything, and then let's give it a minute to load everything. Once everything has loaded, what we will do is we'll first create a new folder called week 4. So I'll say mkdir week 4, press enter, and then I'll navigate to that folder, week 4 ls. There's nothing as of now. So what we are supposed to do first is we will download the distribution code. So I'll come back here, I'll expand this, and I'll copy this entire line, and I'll come here, paste it, press enter, and then we basically inside week 4 we have a zip file called volume.zip. So we will unzip that. Let me make everything bigger a little. Okay, cool. So we will unzip that. We'll unzip volume.zip, press enter, and now we have a folder in the left. So we'll get rid of volume.zip. I'll say rm volume.zip, press enter, y for yes. All right, we got rid of that, and now we will navigate inside the volume folder, and then I'll say code volume.c, press enter. Okay, so this is the code that we are working with. Another thing to keep in mind is we have a audio file called input.wav. If you click here and if you play, this is basically an audio file. Yeah, you might not be able to hear it, but yeah, this is the audio file that we're working with, and we are going to change the volume of this file. When you read the entire description, what you will see is we are going to use 3 command line arguments, which is the first one is going to be, of course, executing the program ./volume. The second thing is input.wav, which is the input file which we already have here, right? The third one is going to be output.wav. We don't really need to create this file manually because that should happen automatically. And the last command line argument is the factor by which we need to change the volume, right? Okay. Another thing to understand here is something about how WAV files work. WAV files begin with a 44-byte header that contains information about the file itself. Basically, the first 44 bytes of the WAV file is the metadata of the file, right? So we are not going to change that, right? Because if we make any changes to the header section of the WAV file, then the entire file will be corrupted, right? Basically, it will not work at all. So the first 44 bytes of the WAV file, which is known as the header, we just want to copy and paste that in the new file, in our output.wav file, right? And similarly, after those 44 bytes, whatever data we have, those are the sequences of audio samples, each of a single 2-byte integer, right? So basically we'll take one audio sample of 2 byte, and then if we have to increase the volume, basically we have to multiply whatever audio sample value we have by the factor that we receive from the user. If the first audio sample was 10 points, for example, we would multiply that by 2.0, and that would give us 20.0, right? And that would basically increase our volume, right? Get the idea? Okay, now let's get programming. Let's go down. This is where we are starting. The input file has been opened, the output file has been opened, and similarly we also have the factor from here. So what we are going to do is we are going to copy the header file from the input file, and then we are paste it in the output file. So to copy the header data from our input file to output file, what we will do is we'll make use of some other data types that will help us to keep track of the bytes that we are using. So to read more about it, we'll come back to the description of our problem, and then we'll come down and we will expand this part, copy wav header from input to output, So basically there are two data types. The first one is uint8t, which is basically 8 bits, right, which is 1 byte. So this might help us keep track of the first header files, because what we basically want to do is we want to use array of size 44. So what we can say is, maybe we can say uint8_t, which is this data type, and then we want to create a header variable of size 44. But we don't necessarily need to hard code this value because that is already given, header size, in a variable called header size. So we'll copy that, come down here, and I'll just replace this. After we have done this, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to copy certain data from the opened input file, and then we are going to paste it into the output file. So to do that, we'll say fread, right? And if you want to read more about it, how this works, we're going to go to manual, and then we'll say fread, read bytes from a file. Let's click here, and then what we will see is if you read everything. So when we are using fread, the first thing that we do is first we give it an address or a variable that we want, and then we give it a size of that variable, and then how many times we want to execute this particular fread statement, and then we give the file name, right? So what I'll do is I'll just copy this entire thing to make our lives easier. Fread, I'll paste it here, and then okay. So what variable are we using? As I said earlier, we are using the header variable, and then size of char. We don't really need the size here because we already have a variable for size. We already have a variable which is a global variable called header size, right? So I'll come down. How many times do I want to repeat it? Just once, because our size is 44. So we'll just go once into our input file. We'll copy 44 bytes, the first 44 bytes, and then where do I want that from? We want it from our input file, right? Okay. Once we have done this, the next thing we need to do is we need to paste this header data from our web file into our output file. So these two functions are very similar, fread and fwrite. So I'll copy this, I'll paste it here. I'll make this fwrite, and then I'll make this our output file. This way we are able to copy the data, the first 44 bytes from our input file, and then we are able to paste it into our output file. So now what we need access to is the data after that, right? But how do we keep track of it? The thing is, we don't really have to, because okay, let's go to fread. What you will see is the open file, because of this function, remembers the number of bytes that were successfully read, such that subsequent calls to this function, basically if we call this function again for stream, will return bytes after those already read. As in, so the first 44 bytes are the metadata. So if we call these functions again, fread and fwrite, we don't have to do anything. It will basically like give us data after those 44 bytes, which is wonderful. Okay, so how are we going to make use of it? So if we go back to our hint, this is another data type, which is an integer of 16 bits, right? 16 bits as in 2 bytes, because 1 byte equals to 8 bits. So if we use this, we'll be able to choose 2 bytes at once, which is our audio sample size, right? So we'll come here and we will use this. We will call this maybe temp variable. So what we will do is we'll say again fread. The variable that we want to use is address here, and the address is going to be for temp, and then the size of we will need to use here. We'll say int 16_t, and then after we have this, we want to do this once. We want to do it from input file, and we want to repeat it basically, right? So that we can take one particular set of 2 bytes, and then we will increase the volume and we will put it in the output file, and then we want to repeat it until the end of file, right? So what I'll do is I'll cut this entire thing and I'll say while this fread function does not return 0, which would mean the end of file. While this does not return 0, what we want to do is we want to take temp, which currently in this loop has the value of the first 2 bytes of the input size of the input file, and we want to multiply that with what? factor. So we want to multiply that with factor, and only then are we going to f-right into, let's just copy this entire thing. Only then do we want to do this, which is then going to be in our output file, and this should work. Let's check the semicolons, everything is in place. Now hopefully this will work. So to check this, what we are going to do is we are going to, let's just try once. First let's make volume. Let's try this. Yep, this gave us a output.wav file, and if I were to listen to it, yeah, that sounds louder. You might not be able to hear it, but anyway, to check the correctness of our program, we'll copy this entire thing, we'll come here, we'll paste it, and then we'll wait for the results, whether or not our program is correct. All right, there we go. Our program is correct. The entire logic is correct. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to check the style if you want copy paste, but what I like to do all the time is click on right top corner, style 50, and then blah blah blah. I don't want to see the changes, just apply it. All right, and then we are going to submit our program. We'll copy this submit code over here in the terminal. I'll paste it, press enter, and then it will ask us whether or not we are sure to submit it, which we are. So we'll say yes, press enter, and then we can see our score from here. So I'll command clip. So check 50 gave us 5 upon 5 for our logic, and style 50 gave us a full point, which is great. So this is how you solve the volume problem of week 4 of CS50. If you want to see more of the solutions for all the upcoming problems, make sure to click on the playlist which is currently on the screen, and if you have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to do that. I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care.